You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I am Sherry Lip, Marketing Manager at Stimulus Technologies, and I am here talking today with Nathan Whitaker, the CEO of Stimulus Technologies, and I'm excited for our conversation. We're going to be talking about the role of AI in cybersecurity, the benefits and the risks. Hello, Nathan.
Hey, Sherry, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining today on our podcast.
How big of a role is AI taking in cybersecurity these days?
It is a big role, both on the hacker side, so on the bad side and the good side. So it's definitely changing the way that we think about cybersecurity because the threats are getting more difficult, but our tools are also getting better as we're improving cybersecurity through AI. And really, I mean, you have to kind of go back and think about what AI is, and what it can do in all roles in our businesses. And I think that if you analyze that and analyze the capabilities, which I think we'll get into in the webinar or this podcast, is understanding what AI does for cybersecurity and how to protect against, an AI backed cyber attack, and also, what you need to do as a business to be able to protect yourself.
And as technology is evolving, what are some of the biggest benefits you've seen in using AI?
So AI is a machine learning system, and it is backed by big data. So AI isn't new. AI has been around for a long time, but what has changed is the technology to be able to get data, and a lot of it, into these computer systems and allow for fast enough process of that data. So historically, my background is in computer science. We would have to write algorithms and code specifically for anything that we want to do. So if we want to write a computer program to build a spreadsheet, we would have to write code that would include math functions and different things that we would have to handwrite all that code to be able to do that. Now with AI and big data, the system can update itself and manipulate itself based off of information that it contains in its learning mechanism, and also learn as it goes. And so the benefit to AI and cybersecurity is that any attack that happens, AI can learn from that. Also, it can collect a lot of data about attack vectors that are happening across the world and use that information to protect your systems much more rapidly than a group of data programmers, computer science programmers that are writing new code, writing new things to protect against those type of threats. So the biggest advantage and the benefit is you're able to consume a lot more data into a protection system and process that data very quickly and adapt very quickly without a lot of human intervention to do that. So that's the biggest benefit, is it's just much more rapid response to the threats that are out there without a lot of human intervention.
And how do you think that might apply to smaller businesses as opposed to large companies? Smaller business owners might not think they have enough data that they have to worry about that kind of thing.
Well, certainly there's this question about large companies being able to take advantage of these systems, and they have experts on staff and security operations centers. But small businesses can use vendors that have incorporated AI, and these vendors are gathering information from threats on all their customers. So now that vendor is aggregating information and threats that are occurring across all their customers, or maybe even globally, because a lot of these vendors share information with each other on threats. And they can use that information to be able to protect businesses of any size. So that's a really big advantage of AI, is that it really brings this technology that's been used by large corporations for years down to businesses that are much smaller. So it really isn't about the data or the systems that the small businesses have versus these large corporations. It's just leveraging the capabilities of these new systems, these new AI systems, that allow for greater protection of small businesses.
And can these AI tools be integrated with existing security systems?
Yeah, that's what these vendors are often doing. So you might have subscribed to some type of email security protection system that was written by computer scientists. And what they're doing now is they're taking AI and leveraging this learning mechanism inside these existing systems. So a lot of the vendors are enhancing their existing protection systems, whether it's spam and email security, or some type of MDR or EDR, which we've talked about, these advanced monitoring systems. They're incorporating more and more AI to allow for collection of large amount of data across these different threats that are out there, and protect their customers in a more global scale, and react faster to those threats. So most security vendors are now incorporating AI into their existing systems. So for small businesses, I think it's looking to the vendors that are already doing this. One small story, this isn't a cybersecurity story, but I find it interesting because it's related to how companies are incorporating AI. We know that Tesla, for example, for many years has their autopilot system, the automatic driving system on their cars, and it was manually programmed by a team that would get inputs back from people that are driving. They would update their system based off of data that they were getting back from people driving over the last 15 years that they've been receiving this data, and they were always having to add code. And they've recently started to incorporate AI into their autopilot system, and they were able to eliminate, they said, 300,000 lines of manually written code with an AI system that is able to learn and adapt as the drivers react to different situations. So if you think about driving, as you're driving the car, there's all kinds of different situations that are out there. For example, one of the exits that I take while driving is, they call it like a reverse diamond exit, where you're actually driving on the wrong side of the road for part of the overpass, and then you have to switch back to the right side of the road after you've exited this overpass area. And it's supposed to increase the flow of traffic, but any parent that's taught their teenage drivers to drive and suddenly say, oh yeah, you got to switch to the wrong side of the road, confuses the heck out of a teenage driver and a car that has an autopilot system. So what I've seen is that whenever I go over this intersection, I drive a Tesla, and I shut the autopilot off because it just gets confused. But as I've driven it more, it's automatically learning, that system is learning how I navigate that scenario each time I drive through it, and it's gotten better and better over time. And that's what AI is it's looking at different scenarios out there that it's never seen before, and it can learn from them. And so from a cybersecurity standpoint, very similar. There's attacks that happen that the systems have never seen before, and AI can react to those and learn from them, depending on what the type of reaction needs to be.
And definitely, have you seen AI play a major role in the cybersecurity situation?
Well, I've definitely seen it on the negative side. So we haven't. I've talked about the positive side. We're seeing it. We had a webinar, I think, a couple of months ago, that we were talking about social engineering, and AI is used by hackers to generate better emails and better communication. So a lot of the hackers outside the US are not English speaking, and it's pretty obvious to detect, what their, the translation mechanism that they're using to generate these emails. But what's happening is they're able to now gather information from, a CEO's social media pages, LinkedIn, maybe bio information that's available on their website, and use that information and the connections they have to create new email content that looks very legitimate, far more legitimate than they were before. And the hackers have been able to automate this process through AI. So the gathering information, like I said in the beginning, you need a large amount of information to generate these AI systems, and that's available on the internet. We're putting it out there through marketing and different efforts, and it's able to consume that and build these attack vectors. And so what we're seeing now is much better, emails and social engineering emails that are really real. They're really um, they're not obvious anymore, and it's harder and harder to detect, from a human perception, detect these AI generated social engineering attacks, whether it's an email or a website you go to or things like that. So that's where I'm seeing it. And then the only way really to defend against these AI generated attacks is with other AI that can detect these minute differences between real information and real requests and what's been faked through an AI system. So definitely seeing that a lot more is these better emails, better communications, better social engineering attacks that are generated by AI.
Yeah, I imagine that it's going to be more of a human factor in reacting to knowing what you're supposed to do with an email and where it's supposed to go. I was joking around with another marketing manager, and he's like, these AI tools are going to make appointments with each other and start buying stuff because they had approved it. But
Yeah, let me have my AI virtual assistant contact your AI virtual assistant
yeah, and
and
then
set up a time for us to meet.
a new office chair and computer for you, and or more. But so that kind of brings around, what are some, obviously we've all seen Terminator 2001, where the AI is, decided humans aren't worth it. But what are some of the real life risks, kind of like that with AI?
Well, AI is not perfect. It's learning by inputs from other people, from that's publicly available, so information that's available. And certainly there's political, ethical, societal discussions that are occurring simultaneously with this about the validity of all this information that's out there. And so that's probably one of the biggest risks is misinformation that's getting into AI. I used the example earlier about the autopilot system and Tesla learning from drivers, but you and I both know that nobody's a perfect driver other than the two of us, and or anybody that's listening here. And so it's getting a lot of, just joking aside, all of us make mistakes while driving, and if an AI system's learning from people that are always making mistakes, it's going to have mistakes built into it, and that's the risk of big data and learning, is controlling what is legitimate information. And I think this is a bigger AI topic, but that's the legal implication is this information that's learning from, is it gathering data potentially about internal workings of a business, potentially data that is protected data, legally protected data. Maybe there's NDAs in place that protect this data that's going in and out of the network. And this is not information that you want your cybersecurity system learning from. So that's the implication here is, what data is gathered could be a problem. I think, an aside on this right now, just kind of getting off track on AI. There's this case right now where ChatGPT, OpenAI, released a voice model that was loosely and obviously based on an actress, Scarlett Johansson. And she didn't give her authorization to use a similarity to her voice, even though they asked for it. She denied, their authorization. They went ahead and did it anyways, and they said, "Oh, it's not exactly like her voice, but it's very clearly very similar to hers." And so, what's stopping these companies of creating similar models for voice prompts or writing or things like that? And then you get into, like you were saying before, if we have these virtual assistants that are AI, whether it's Microsoft Copilot or using ChatGPT, it's learning from the way that you work. And so what's stopping the system from being you, or just automatically generating emails that you didn't want it to do, or setting appointments, or buying things that you don't want it to buy? So there's certainly implications from a societal standpoint that we have to worry about. So in cybersecurity, it's the same way. Do you want it gathering information on confidential spreadsheets, confidential documents, confidential emails, and learning from those, and potentially that information getting out into the wild?
And so, yeah, I was going to ask what kinds of legal implications might there be, and some stuff probably hasn't even been put in place yet when it comes to that. Are we disclosing that we're using AI to manage the data?
It's a wild, wild west right now. It's this has come on full force. Really, I think because it just barely became, kind of an early adopter situation in the last year versus, bleeding edge for the last 10 or 15 years. AI has been used for a long time. This, building these data models has been happening over the last 15, 20 years, maybe even longer. But because it's now commonly used and easily used by individuals and businesses, this become the forefront of the discussion. But we really don't have, from a society standpoint, regulations or laws around this. And certainly not a lot of court cases have been heard on this. So, it's again the Wild West until I think this gets into society a little bit longer. And this takes a little bit of time because there's different countries are going to have different opinions on it. European Union seems to be a little stricter on data privacy than the US is. So we might see different regulations happening in different jurisdictions. And then once those regulations come out, there's certainly going to be court cases that are going to occur. So it'll be interesting to watch from a legal perspective over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes, definitely. And I saw a huge debate on the Scarlett Johansson. And some people are like, they shouldn't do it. And some people were like, why not? It wasn't her. So it wasn't really her. So why not? So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what's to come. What do you think? How do you think business owners should stay educated on this type of use?
Well, thanks for being here to be educated. That's the first step, is really hearing what's out there, what opportunities there are. I think this is one of the biggest topics for the next few years. Because if you're not using it, your competitors are probably using AI, and certainly, threats to your organization, whether it's a hacker or whether it's a competitor. Other people are going to be using AI systems to attack your company, whether it's harmful attacks or just attacks by doing better marketing and sales and things like that. So I strongly encourage business owners to stay on top of this, learn as much as you can. We'll be talking more and more about this on this podcast because I think it's a big part of what's happening in the industry in general. From a cybersecurity front, you should have a good partner on your technology and security side that is understanding these threats that are out there and making sure that they're working with vendors and companies that are staying on top of all these threats that are happening. So at Stimulus Technologies, We are, really looking at new vendors always to see how they're incorporating new technologies into their system and updating our security efforts to protect against these advanced threats that are out there. So just have a good partner, have a good guide that's helping you through this, because this is a complex topic. And I don't think, unless this is your business, it's hard to stay on top of it. Even if it is your business, like it is ours, it's a fast moving and hard to stay on top of topic.
Yeah, and I was going to say, what role does Stimulus Technologies play in this new technology for clients, potential clients, and how can they make sure they're staying on top of it with their own business?
Yeah, I think right now, having advanced security mechanisms in place, we've talked often about like antivirus 1.0 versus EDR system and endpoint detect and respond. Most EDRs now have AI built into them to detect advanced threats. We're doing a migration for all of our clients from one type of antivirus system to another. Same thing with our email security, an older generation of email security system to a more advanced email security system. So we're always looking at our vendors to ensure that they're staying on top of the technologies and threats that are out there and making changes to our product offering to ensure that our clients are protected. So it's a constant moving target for us, and that's why our clients rely on us, is that we're the ones doing the analysis and ensuring that the technology we're using can be the best protection. So if you're not one of our clients, feel free to, contact us. We could do an assessment to see where you're at and how, you could be better protected moving forward with all the threats that are out there to your company. So we're happy to do those assessments, an initial assessment for free for anybody. So give us a contact and we're happy to have a discussion about it.
Yes, definitely. One thing I've learned over the past year is that AI is not going away. So you
No.
can't ignore it.
No, it is not. But it's fun. I mean, for me, it's very exciting. Of course, I'm a technologist, but I'm sure we'll talk about this in a future podcast. But I found recently a new technology. This isn't cybersecurity related. That is an AI system, and it was just really interesting as I was showing it to some of my peers, CEO peers. That aren't in the technology space. Oh my goodness, it got their minds going about all the possibilities of some of these AI systems that are out there. So even if you're not in technology, I think this is an exciting time to be in business. As long as you're willing to stay on top of it, it's certainly these technologies. We're on an early adopter stage. If you think about the graph, it's that old traditional bell chart. But we are on, the early adopter stage of AI technologies. And as businesses, we need to, be on that cusp, because once it makes it over to the, everybody adopting it, it's not going to be as impactful. So, that's the goal that we help our clients of, looking at these new technologies and adapting to them and incorporating them in their business, so you can be the best business you can be in whatever industry you're in.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for the information. Always fun to talk about AI and what's coming up.
Certainly is. Thanks everybody for being here.